games entirely. And that means money loss for Activision. When you get in between Bobby Kotick and his fucking money, yeah, you bet lawyers are getting involved. But of course, anti-cheat has been basically brought in by tons of video games out there. For instance, Easy Anti-Cheat powers all of the games that you're seeing right now. BattleEye is powering all these games that you're seeing right now. And of course, Valorant, which has Vanguard, is probably one of the best anti-cheats on the market. And this is the one where I guess a lot of gamers really learned about, Ring 0 drivers, kernel drivers, which run at the highest elevated permissions on your system. Now, as somebody that advocates privacy and computer security, you can imagine why I'm not comfortable with a video game. Remember, this is a video game. It's something for you to relax and enjoy for maybe an hour of your day. If that is running at the highest elevated permissions just to ensure a fair game, then for me, it's not worth playing that game, and I can just go play something else, right? That's where I kind of come into. Obviously, some gamers who love these type of things disagree. See, my stance means that I can't play basically 90% of multiplayer games out there on the market unless I, by technicality, am kind of violating the rules by using a virtual machine. I have a pretty hardline stance against this, and I think most people should. Call of Duty, which actually introduced Ricochet Anti-Cheat, which was their version of kernel anti-cheat security drivers. Again, these are Ring 0 drivers that are running at the most elevated permission level. And even these drivers don't seem to do a whole heck of a lot at times too. For instance, even according to Valorant, you can see footage online of people using what is known as extrasensory perception hacks, where this scumbag can see all these players and where they are in relation to his distance. So again, this is the most stringent game in terms of security, and it's very good. I gotta give Riot Games credit, but it's still unfortunately bypassed. You have scumbag companies openly advertising on Google, teaching you about extrasensory perception cheats. And if you think Valorant has it bad, Tarkov has it even worse.
Tarkov's got it the worst.
The ratio is like
Tarkov's almost the worst of it.
Very few legitimate gamers.
It destroyed Tarkov.
Yeah, these cheats exist.
I watched a whole bunch of series about this from Pistilli and shit. Like, apparently, all the hackers destroyed Tarkov. The real guys, a lot of them won't do it anymore. They just won't fight them.
And
a big depressing part of the scene came out where there was an exposed video that was done where this guy showed off that there was a secret language that all the ESP aimbotter pieces of shit wall hack motherfuckers were using, where like when a hacker encounters another hacker in the wild, they don't want to kill hackers, they want to kill people who aren't hacking. So they shift duck at each other through the wall, and when they see them confirm, they see each other confirm through the wall because they both got wall hacked. They can see through the wall, and they see the guy shift ducking like this. It's a confirmation that the other guy's a hacker and that they shouldn't kill each other. That's like two sharks killing each other in a big school of fish. There's no point in that. And when we discovered this about Tarkov, it pretty much broke the scene and unraveled it slowly a little bit.
Fortunately, they're not going anywhere because these cheats are serious money makers for these scumbags. These cheats are being sold by the bucket load. And to give you an idea, it's gotten to the point where these cheats don't even...
Who buys this stupid shit?
See, for these cheats to be detected, usually what will happen is anti-cheats will look through memories and process and see what actual
Why can't you sell something?
Are interacting with the game and what games are fuddling around with memory. But now there exist things like AI aimbots, which don't even touch the game. They just look at a video feed of the game and correct your mouse movements as you pan over other players using artificial intelligence, which again is getting to a point where it's very, very undetectable. A lot of people have the hardware to run this type of software in real time and basically use AI-based anti-cheats. For instance, this one scumbag is advertising an actual anti-cheat on YouTube. It should be removed. This is a violation of YouTube's TOS, where they're showing an AI cheat that as you pan over a player, reduces your mouse movement so you can better aim for heads or the body. And again, these scumbags sell it for 20 bucks a month, 20 euros a month. So again,
yeah, just, run your mouse over him and it'll be a headshot. Yeah, great.
Ladies and gentlemen, these people sell this software, and this is even more dangerous dangerous than the anti-cheat software. If you thought the anti-cheat software ran invasive, this software runs even more invasive on your system. Not only that, it comes with its own DRM, and in certain cases can actually cause serious harm to a user. So again, if you're dumb enough to cheat in a video game and also dumb enough to install their crazy software, I kind of don't have sympathy for you getting hacked, but it's a good showcase to teach you that as this cheating software gets so invasive, so does the anti-cheat software. And unfortunately, the average gamer, like me and you, are tossed in the middle of it. We have to have our computers basically be penetrated security-wise just to play video games nowadays.
Testify,
and
brother.
Even for these AI cheats, there's actual AI anti-cheats, which again are designed for looking at video footage and basically discerning if maybe AI was involved in the aiming or maybe it wasn't. Again, I don't understand the point of the software. Usually you want to stop a cheater in real time, not after the cheating has happened, where again, gamers already have quit the game. There are games like The Finals, which recently just had a beta, and they had a very serious cheating situation.
Yep.
So again, that's a game in beta. And again, because of their cheating...
There was so many cheaters in the finals. It was disgusting. I got kind of angry after a bit. I was like, yeah, there's no way that guy pegged that like that. There's no way.
Situation, you can bet the anti-cheats are going to get even more invasive because that's what you're paying them for.
Finals was good though. The finals was really good.
Is because sometimes, in some cases, they can be used to attack people that don't have any connection to these games. If you remember about a year ago, we looked at a anti-cheat known as myprop2.sys, which was a vulnerable anti-cheat driver for a game known as Genshin Impact. This driver is currently abused by a ransomware actor to kill antivirus processes and services for mass deploying ransomware. Security teams and defenders should note that this could be integrated into any malware. So the general idea is they found a code-signed driver called myprop2.sys, which provides those anti-cheat functions for Genshin Impact. And it was basically being abused to bypass privileges, and basically commands from kernel mode would kill endpoint protection processes. So as of this writing, the code signing for myprop2 is still valid. Genshin Impact does not need to be installed on a victim's device for this to work. The use of this driver is independent of the game. And I've always said it, I don't really disbelieve like anti-cheat manufacturers. I get it. I understand why they have to do it. And I don't think that BattlEye, Easy Anti-Cheat, Riot Games, or any of these companies are actually out there to use them for a nefarious purpose. The problem is they serve a very dangerous supply chain. If there is a bug detected in their drivers, it could be used against a lot of people in a very nefarious manner. Now again, I went on a massive tirade about anti-cheat technologies. And again, this is the crux of why I use virtual machines. See, when I used to play multiplayer games, the problem is giving up my level of safety and security for playing a video game. And I thought virtual machines was a pretty fine compromise against that. Unfortunately, the gaming population and the gaming development space thought that that wasn't a good compromise, which is why virtual machines have been targeted. Can people use the same virtual machine technology that I use to hack video games? Absolutely. But at the same time, I would argue it's a lot easier to use, malcrafted drivers, something of that nature. I would pretty much say that this virtualized gaming setup material that I use is still very, very, very cumbersome for the average hacker to spin up, especially when that same hacker has to be streaming to hundreds of people on the internet, pretending that they're a good player anyways. But yeah, that's really one of the things that I wanted to get at over here, right? Obviously, for me, virtual machines are not just a principle, it's a way for me to keep my core computer safe from the various, kernel-level drivers, from the various invasiveness that not just Windows throws at me, but these video games as well.
And honestly, if there was anybody in the world that might get targeted by a hacker, like fucking Cell, it could be this guy. So, he has real reason. I might have real reason in the end to do stuff like this. I'm not afraid. I know Linux. I'm not afraid of running virtual machines. I just would need the money to buy the hardware, frankly.
It's kind of fucked up that as somebody that doesn't cheat in online video games, I have to basically be on the same chopping block as a cheater just because the method that I use to play video games is now flagged as suspicious by these actual anti-cheat developers. And I've said this.
Yeah, it turns out virtual is how they've been doing a lot of it. Was virtual machines on Apple. That's how they did a lot of it, like what they were doing.
Time and time again, what I do isn't necessarily cheating at all. There are actually far easier ways to cheat with video games. And all of this could easily be alleviated if a lot of these multiplayer gaming developers just decided to take the stick out of their ass and enable some of their anti-cheat for Linux software out there. Again, I get that we're 1 to 2% of the population out there in the internet, but Jesus Christ, ladies and gentlemen, as the Steam Deck gets popular, and when Valve finally releases SteamOS to the public, you think people buying any of their handheld PC gaming devices aren't going to be installing SteamOS on there for extra performance, and not to mention the fact that you get a bunch of extra cool features like suspend, resume? Yeah, of course people are going to be doing that. And of course, with Valve's effort in this space, they're finally creating the only competition right now to Microsoft Windows. And at this moment in time, I think that a lot of these gaming companies, especially gaming companies that run some of the biggest multiplayer products like Rainbow Six Siege, should probably open up just a little bit, okay? That's all I'm asking. Look, maybe this whole video was me basically trying to beg Ubisoft to finally allow me to play one of my favorite games again on my setup. But yeah, this whole video came out for me basically showing you that virtualization technology is not dead. It's still alive and well. And no matter how many times these companies fight for me to stay on Windows and allow them to invade my computer's privacy and safety, there will always be a method against it. And I wholeheartedly recommend you to always keep yourself safe and never compromise your privacy and your security for any video game company, let alone any piece of software. You know, even looking at things that I covered back in the day, like proctoring software, where people during COVID were basically doing tests over the internet. They had to install some of the most invasive shit on their computers. And for me to basically show people how to use virtual machines, even the most invasive levels of virtual machines, to bypass that was a civic duty, okay? Because at the end of the day, no software, whether it be a game or anything, should have such invasive hooks into your system. That's unsafe, it's unwarranted, and you should feel totally okay and well within your goddamn right to keep your stuff safe. And you know, this is not too different from the Xbox. When you play the Xbox titles on your Xbox Series X or the Xbox One, those run underneath virtual machines through Hyper-V. So again, it's totally okay for that to happen there, and it works really great. It keeps everything separate. It's actually one of the main reasons why nobody really hacked the Xbox One or the Series systems. Because even if you can find an exploit in a certain video game, because it's running in a virtual machine, all Microsoft does is crash the VM and force you to reboot. If we could just bring that level of separation, that church and state, over to PC gaming, then I think that would be a fair compromise. In a perfect world, a lot of these games would just have their own separate executable files. They would partition a portion of your GPU, run their games in their own virtualized container, meaning that I couldn't look into their software and they can't look into mine. And by having that separation, playing their video games for an hour would be a total love by me. But ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like the video.
Thank you, Mutahar. It was excellent content for my stream. I'd like to sub to your channel.
As they're pretty much the leaders of the network. Another podcast central to this story, formerly under the Obsessed Network umbrella, is called Obsessed with Disappeared, and it started in May 2020 and was hosted by Patrick Hines of True Crime Obsessed and his longtime friend and Broadway performer, Ellen Marsh. And their friendship was displayed during this podcast over the next 2 years, which fans say included Patrick making frequent jokes at Ellen's expense due to them being such good friends. But looking back, they now come off as harsh, rude comments. After Patrick left the podcast in early 2022, by February, Ellen was joined by a new co-host, a Broadway performer and vocalist named Joey Toronto. And in December of 2022, Obsessed with Disappeared changed their name to I Think Not, which quickly became one of the most beloved podcasts under the whole Obsessed Network umbrella. And this catches us up to the Reddit post I mentioned earlier. This user uploaded on July 11th after they noticed that Patrick and Ellen no longer follow each other on Instagram and have unfriended each other other on Facebook. You could call that parasocial behavior, but in this case, it's just good journalism. And under this post, many fans of the former podcast were speculating on why things fell apart, with one user, Long Jumping Chicken, replying to the post explaining that they've been in social situations with Patrick Hines in the past, and they've been waiting to drop this information for years. They start the comment by saying, Patrick Hines is an awful person. I know him very peripherally. I'm not trying to use this as some kind of flex, but I was at his party after his Broadway show. It was definitely a friend of a friend of a friend situation. They go on adding, though Patrick and I have met 3, maybe 4 times, he never remembers my name. Though we are kind of in the same circle, he would walk right past me on the street, and I'm definitely not cool enough to be important to him. Ellen, on the other hand, no matter where I run into her, throws her arms around me, and is so sweet and genuine, and has never really forgotten my name. And Joey and Ellen were both at the TCO's live show. I only know that from socials, but Ellen wasn't at Patrick's Broadway party. They explained that even if you didn't know what they knew about Patrick, paying any attention to his socials will tell you he's either very jealous of Joey and Ellen, or whatever issue Jillian Pensavalle, as the main composer, has had with Ellen over the years, has forced Patrick to pick a side. And they note that since Patrick has left the I Think Not podcast, he hasn't promoted their show or tour a single time. After this, they write that they saw a video of one of Patrick's live shows where he tells a story that he formerly told on the podcast. And in the live show, he started cutting Ellen's name out, replacing it by just saying somebody instead of giving her credit. They end the post by saying, I also know someone who's fired from the network and asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. It sounds like some Weinstein or Trump shenanigans. Who does that? And this person said it was the absolute worst job of their life. 2 weeks later, on July 30th, this same Reddit user with inside info replies to a different post where fans are discussing rumors about the future of I Think Not. And they write that the podcast will eventually have to end because Patrick fired Ellen and Joey months ago, with them adding in a later reply that there's been tension within the network since Joey has had to stand up against Ellen being bullied multiple times. 2 weeks pass, and on August 15th, the drama blows up, with a Reddit user uploading a post on a throwaway account saying, I went to DBU and majored in eavesdropping, which DB stands for Down Bitch, the name used by the most dedicated I Think Not fans and Patreon members. And in this post, they note that the previously talked about comments from Long Jumping Chicken have encouraged them to come forward with their own story. They start by saying that they were with their husband in New York City for their birthday a few months ago, adding that they were on the lookout for Obsessed Network members, and her husband spots Ellen. He sees Ellen's profile, but most importantly, recognizes her voice. He started listening and was like, OMG, I double-checked just knowing who's making fun of me. It's her. They need to say hi. She's with her friends, but as I go over, they start talking louder, and they all seem mad as hell. They're talking really fast, and I speak somberly. But now I'm noticing. I was starstruck, and I couldn't help myself. I know. Not the best team. And they go on to share some eye-opening things that will only throw fuel on the rumor fire. Her friend asked, how would they not have I Think Not with Ellen Marsh and Joey Toronto, with no Ellen Marsh and Joey Toronto? I didn't catch Ellen's response as I was literally freaking out. The other woman said, where did this all come from? And Joey, whoever she was with, clearly knew a lot because they also kept saying stuff like, I'm just paraphrasing here, what a effing monster. It really hit me, and I heard someone say, I've been with you for so long. Really? For how long? WTF? What is happening here? How long? Saying that, Ellen seemed mad, but very sad too, with her friends consoling her, saying F him a bunch. Then they hear Ellen say something about I Think Not. She kept saying how they wanted $3 million from her and Joey. She kept saying $3 million for the show I created in a very Ellen dramatic way, which is confusing because someone definitely said, so he basically fired you. Adding that, NDA was said about 100 times, and Ellen said, I'd rather have a heart-to-heart with my dad than sign an effing NDA, or something like that. With their conclusion, after hearing all this info, along with piecing together posts from the subreddit, being that Ellen and Joey were forced to pay $3 million for the rights to their show, otherwise Obsessed Network would just fire them. 1 day later, Long Jumping Chicken replied to this post, explaining that this whole situation came around because I Think Not used a TikTok sound that True Crime Obsessed wanted to use first. And I Think Not pushed back when asked to delete the TikTok, saying that Patrick apparently threw a tornado of a hissy fit, then sent his husband, Steve Tipton, to deliver the news. Going on to add that the next day, I I Think Not was told that they'd be sold to another network, with Ellen and Joey being offered the same deal as any other network of $3 million. A week after they won August 12th, somebody that has known Patrick and Ellen for around 10 years posted this AMA on Reddit offering to set some straight, and they were helped by their roommate, who is even closer to Patrick than Ellen. Someone replying to this post asks if Ellen and Joey plan to continue podcasting after things end with the Obsession Network. With the original poster replying, to my knowledge, they never plan to stop. All I've heard from both of them is how they genuinely enjoy it. They just don't enjoy being abused at work. Ellen put up with it, but Joey is not willing to deal with it. Nor should he. Hello? Another user asked the question. In the earlier years that Obsessed with disappeared, was the power dynamic between Patrick and Ellen? I know a lot of people love their banter, but I was always uncomfortable with the low blows. It seemed like Patrick was mean, / had no boundaries, and Ellen didn't stand up to him. Maybe it was just the shtick. The original poster replying, it was more balanced before Obsessed with disappeared. He had it in him to cause her to cry, and then publicly make fun of it. It's sick. Someone else replied to this saying, OMG, this is beyond terrible. I always just thought it was their shtick. With the original poster answering, yeah, I think he just wants people to believe that. They never used to be that way. Weird stuff. Kind of heartbreaking to see the change, to be honest. He officiated her wedding, for God's sake. Later, someone asks, what's the details of the rift between Ellen and Patrick? Are Joey and Ellen being fired? What caused the fight? With the poster replying, Ellen and Joey are indeed being fired. Ellen and Patrick got in a pointless fight because Jillian basically said, her or me. And Patrick said, money. The next day, another user makes a post titled The Recent Tea, where they summarize all of the chaos that we've been through so far, adding that the True Crime Obsessed Facebook page is basically a toxic wasteland, where anybody that asks about these rumors is blocked, with comments deleted. Somebody else replies to this, correctly stating that Obsessed Fest should be interesting, because in just a few months from October 20th, Obsessed Fest would be happening in Dallas, Texas. But following this Reddit post, another one was made by somebody on the inside, basically confirming all the rumors to be true, saying, someone linked me to this group because I work with the Obsessed Network. I guess people are worried that the claims being posted here by insiders could just be rumors. But they're not. That's all. Just know that it's not made up. And at this point, public sentiment's not looking too good for Patrick and Jillian. With tons of people flooding their Facebook pages, asking about the future of I Think Not. And on August 28th, Patrick Hines uploads this statement, saying, hi fam, well, it's been a week, though we know better not to pay attention to, like, it seems like a good idea to jump in here and put some rumors about Ellen and Joey and the future of I Think Not to bed. One thing I know about my many years online is that you should never trust somebody that says, well, like, that's something Drake would do. First, and most importantly, I want to make it clear that Ellen and Joey have not been fired. Despite some confusion we've heard about, they're continuing to make 2 episodes a week, and just announced a tour featuring them. Plus, they'll be joining us at Obsessed Fest, and we're still getting paid on schedule as planned. Now, as for the future of I Think Not, we've been collaborating with Ellen, Joey, and their team for several months now to figure out what happens when the contracts come up at the end of the year. We haven't wanted to say too much about this one out of respect for Ellen and Joey and the privacy of these confidential business conversations. However, I can assure you that our shared objective is to reach an agreement about a way forward for all of us. With fans soon after saying this basically confirms all the rumors about the $3 million contract for the show, contradicting his statement that Ellen and Joey weren't fired when clearly they were forced out of the network. But soon after, Patrick uploaded a second statement on September 6th. Hey fam, I wanted to share some important news regarding the I Think Not podcast. We are pleased to announce that the Obsessed Network and Ellen and Joey have reached an amicable agreement to transfer ownership of the podcast and its production from the network to Ellen and Joey. The agreement includes the transfer of the I Think Not RSS feed, all relevant social media accounts, and the I Think Not Patreon account, which will take effect on September 15th, 2023. We are confident that this transition aligns with the best interests of the podcast, Ellen and Joey, and the dedicated I Think Not community. Following this, fans note that the transfer of social media accounts led to most of this drama discussion being centralized within the I Think Not Facebook group. Then, about a month after this, on October 3rd, a journalist named James Renner uploads this article to his Medium website titled Obsessed Pest. And in this extremely in-depth story, which I'll link below, we start by saying that the person that Patrick Hines pretends to be in public is an act. And behind the scenes, he's actually threatening and insufferable, with one employee exclaiming, "He's very scary." He goes from 0 to 60 immediately. In one example, Patrick threatens to fire a podcast host because they were late for a meeting, even though Patrick was late for the same meeting the week before, with him saying, "I have to get off the phone with you, or this is going to end with you being off the podcast." James also writes, a host was once reprimanded for not having a smile on her face during a company meeting. According to office workers, women seem to receive the brunt of his anger. He's allegedly much softer with men. Single-handedly proving that gay guys can be just as misogynistic as straight men. But then the employees go into detail about the falling out with Ellen, saying that things began to fall apart when Joey Toronto stood up for Ellen Marsh during a company meeting. He objected to the way Patrick treated Ellen, which reportedly involved much screaming and yelling. Patrick didn't like being confronted, with another independent contractor that formerly worked for True Crime Obsessed confirming this, saying, "I witnessed the abuse with Ellen firsthand." She says he threatened her repeatedly. He threatened to fire her several times. It was unfair and abusive treatment. Patrick ostracized Ellen in the office. He would scream at her in front of other people. She remembers hearing him say to Ellen, "I wouldn't care if your child was threatened. I'd never take your side." What the hell is going on? Patrick sounds like the most insufferable human being ever. Like, miles worse than Felicia in my last video. And James notes in the article that several people witnessed Patrick get on his knees in a room full of people at Obsessed Fest last year, begging Ellen to forgive him again. Then he goes over the incident of the stolen TikTok sound. Earlier this year, Ellen and Joey used an audio clip from the film The Bling Ring in a TikTok video that garnered a lot of attention. After the clip was posted, the host received an email from Steve Tipton, Patrick's husband and business partner, telling them that Patrick was planning to use the audio for a TikTok post featuring himself and for their podcast, True Crime Obsessed. When they explained to Steve that deleting a video could impact the app's algorithm, Steve responded that this was not a request. Do these boomers know how TikTok works? Millions of people use the same sound, and many TikTokers have accounts built up of using the same sound over and over again. This isn't some first come, first serve situation. Like, what's the problem here? Further in the article, employees claim that Patrick frequently makes racist and sexist remarks. When one host pitched a new show based on a story from South Africa, Patrick allegedly responded, "I'm just not interested in that. Sorry, I don't know why. Is it because they're black?" Adding that, on more than one occasion, Patrick is reported to have said, "Lesbians want to F all of our hosts," in front of staff. During the taping of one podcast, Hines was recorded saying that a fan was lesbian for Maggie, suggesting that a straight fan would make an exception for Maggie Freeling given the opportunity. In reaction to this quip, Obsessed Network executive producer Becca DeGregorio expressed her concerns in a group message on Slack that was seen by employees as well as Hines and Tipton. DeGregorio said she was cutting the audio from the episode. An employee seated near Hines and Tipton when the message came through said simply, "They lost their shit," with Patrick replying to this message saying, "Your feedback is really appreciated. However, I don't think it was the right thing to put in the general channel. It would have been more appropriate to bring it to Steve and me as your supervisors and let us discuss with the talent." With Becca coming back saying, "You and Steve are not a safe space for me to bring this feedback to because it also concerns you." And I think it's pretty clear that the entanglement of drama between yourselves, the host, and others at the company leaves employees like me confused as to how to communicate feedback without having it weaponized. Later in the article, they note, workplace diversity is also problematic. At the time a new producer was hired, there was not a single person of color working in the office. When they raised this issue with Patrick, he replied that it wasn't a real problem because he was a gay man and knew what it was like to be a member of a minority group. The article continues by describing a few more instances of Patrick's degrading behavior. There's one where he yelled at an assistant for not turning on the AC exactly 6 hours before he recorded. Another employee booked some Uber trips for Patrick and immediately saw their rating tank after Patrick berated every driver for not going the directions he yelled at them, with one incident where Patrick threatened to call the cops on his Uber driver. Beyond this, employees say that whenever they travel, Patrick and Steve always stay at the nicest resorts, while everybody else stays at the local Hilton Inn and Suites. And whenever at the airport, trying to get Patrick on an airplane is like dealing with a child. He had to be herded to the gate, often sending high-level employees on errands for water and snacks. Then, with Obsessed Fest coming up this year, one guest that couldn't attend is Elena Urquhart, the co-host of a very popular podcast called Morbid. And she was scheduled to appear at last year's festival, but had a last-minute family emergency. Patrick allegedly contacted her at the hospital to tell her that she was ruining Obsessed Fest by not being there in person. Just a class act. The next story in the article is shared by Julia Hager, a volunteer in talent services at last year's Obsessed Fest. She starts by noting that she was in the green room next door to Patrick when he got the news that Elena wouldn't be showing up, and she could hear him shouting next door. Julia has long time been a fan of the Obsessed podcast, but explains that volunteering for them isn't all it's cracked up to be. The Obsessed Network staff was incredibly rude to the convention staff and volunteers. And she says that the event was extremely disorganized and nobody knew who was in charge. And it then fell to the volunteers to find out where the podcasters should be and at what times. But Julia says that Patrick wasn't very interested in following that schedule. She remembers him flying off the handle a number of times that weekend, shouting things like, "I never agreed to that timeline. Nobody tells me anything." Later, when Julia went into the green room to collect the pencil out, Patrick asked her, "Who are you? What are you doing?" Even though he had already met her 10 times by then. And Jillian was cold and uninterested. "I'm not on obsessed time right now," she told her. "I'm on my downtime." And after this bombshell article dropped, Patrick immediately tried to throw mud in the water by uploading a statement the very next day. "Hey fam, many of you asked us about a story making the rounds today about Obsessed Network. The piece has a number of errors, factual inaccuracies, and anonymous sources that clearly were included to drive a narrative that simply isn't true," followed by a bunch of corporate speak about them being loyal to fans and continuing to foster an inclusive workplace. Then Julia Rea, not the volunteer, but the former contractor that worked for True Crime Obsessed, posted an AMA on Reddit laying down some facts about the situation. Somebody replies, "In their recent statement, Patrick and Steve said the article by James Renner was full of inaccuracies. What percent of the article was inaccurate in your opinion?" And Julia says 0.0%. Later, somebody asks, "How quickly did the abuse directed at Ellen start?" I remember thinking the comments towards her got nasty quickly on the podcast. And Julia replies, "As a listener, I think about 6 months in. As a friend, about 8 weeks. Okay, and we're at the point where we're caught up to Obsessed Fest 2023, which took place in Dallas, Texas from Friday, October 20th to Sunday, April 7th. And I have to give credit to this massive Google Doc from Eric covering this whole situation. I found it linked on Reddit, and they have dozens of pages going into literally every detail that exists online in relation to this drama. So I'll link it below if you have 2 to 3 hours to go through everything. But now let's talk about the festival. The price tiers for tickets were as follows. $200 for the Fest Pass, which includes all daytime programming and no additional events. $225 for the Obsessed Pass, which includes everything from before, plus 1 ticket to the True Crime Obsessed live show and 1 ticket to the I Think Not live show. $300 for the Obsessed plus Drag Brunch, which includes everything from before, plus 1 ticket to Drag Brunch. $600 for the Premium, which includes everything from before, plus access to an exclusive meet and greet with featured guests, an exclusive panel with Obsessed Fest featured guests, and an exclusive swag pack. $1,200 for the Premium Liberty, a name based on the long time.
I'm sorry, guys. Got to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in just a minute.
An inside joke that comes from people on the Bravo TV channel being called Bravo Celebrities. Remember this information because it'll be important in a second. But for this tier, you get everything from before.
Yeah, I'm going to bed here soon. I'm just trying to actually flip my schedule, so that means like staying up as late as I can. Might not make it that late, but I'm trying, you know. Yeah, I haven't done a long stream in a while, but I have done it before. I've done some long streams. 28 hours, 24, 20. I've done it before.
Guaranteed seating in all main stage sessions.
Be right back.
Exclusive cocktail party with Obsessed Fest featured guests. An exclusive programming session. A dedicated customer service liaison. And priority spots for participating in things like Jeopardy and karaoke. And I have to note that Patrick's recently released memoir is included with all ticket tiers. I'm guessing he's having trouble selling those things. He has to literally give them away. And in regards to these price tiers, fans noted some glaring issues leading up to the festival. The Obsessed Fest management company, Mischief Management, which we'll hear more about in a bit, set up a virtual meet and greet queue system, which filled up for the most popular guests within seconds, leaving many of the $600 ticket holders without an option to see the people they actually came for. Then it was revealed after the tickets were purchased that the featured guests for the exclusive meet and greet and panel were actually from the Red Handed and Wine and Crime podcasts, two shows that aren't even actually from the Obsessed network, which left many fans upset. The exclusive programming was then revealed to be Patrick's Choose Your Own Adventure, where the audience that paid $1,200 gets to tell him what part of his memoir they want him to read, which sounds like the most boring convention event ever. When it comes to the swag bags that were promised, it included a plastic drinking cup, a sticker, a pin, and a tote bag. And the premium celebrities got the same thing, except the tote bag was replaced with a mini backpack. Many of the festival attendees from last year reported that the swag bags were equally pathetic. In the days leading up to the event, the Obsessed Fest volunteers were told they'd have to pay $20 a day in parking. And the good guys, Ellen and Joey, posted on Facebook offering to pay for any volunteers that reached out to them. Then, fans described the opening ceremony as a shit show. Compared to last year's hour-long opening where every podcast host was brought on stage and introduced, this year it only ran for 20 minutes and Patrick, Steve, and Natalie Grillo were the only people that made it on stage, with Jillian Pensavalle, Patrick's co-host, nowhere to be seen. Following the opening session, fans noticed that the I Think Not merch was being sold at the tables, but it's the only podcast merch that wasn't being hung up displayed. And over on Reddit, drama about this event was already being spread through this Obsessed Fest 2023 mega thread, where one festival attendee wrote, "Patrick and Jillian just walked past a line of people and nobody said anything. It was like Nancy Grace at CrimeCon." Then a large screaming ovation for Ellen across the hall. It was perfection. Another one added, "The number of people in the lobby is much lower than last year. Most people, like all other podcasters, have decided to go somewhere else. Only one person I've talked to here hasn't been following the drama because they just want to enjoy the podcast and ignore the rest. Everyone else I've talked to is annoyed about the situation and is actively avoiding Patrick. They just want to have fun with other DBs. I heard people rode in the elevator with him and basically ignored him. He is getting attention from a small group of loyalists, but definitely not the majority of people so far." Ouch. And I'm sure Patrick will blame everybody but himself for this happening. But Friday also happened to be the same day as the exclusive programming session, or Patrick's book reading. And out of the 75 tickets sold, only 8 people showed up, with at least 3 of those people only showing up to mean mug Patrick the entire time. Friday night was the exclusive cocktail party for the premium celebrity guests, which apparently meant you had to buy all of your own drinks. Also, this insane moment happened. 2 women at the VIP cocktail hour were wearing shirts that said "Accountable Celebrity" and "Duped Celebrity," and they were at this background stand taking a photo with Payne Lindsay. Payne then waves Patrick over, knowing that these women wanted a photo with him. Patrick takes one look at the woman with the "Accountable Celebrity" shirt on and says, "I'm not taking a photo with you in that shirt," with Patrick turning on his heel and walking away, physically pushing the woman out of the way to get past them. Also, according to another attendee, Patrick was then overheard calling that woman an effing bitch to Jillian. Now, if you think all of that was bad, just wait, because this is where shit really hits the fan. It starts at 11 a.m. on Saturday with Tara Newell, a woman that took down her abusive stepfather, Dirty John, in 2016, and now runs a podcast with her boyfriend and fellow trauma survivor, Collier Landry. And both Tara and Collier ended up in an elevator Saturday morning with Ellen. In a post from Ellen, which we'll go in more depth about in a second, she writes that she was verbally accosted in an elevator by 2 hosts who I do not know by sight, who I've never met, and who no longer have programming today. Adding that, Tara said to her, "You've caused no end of drama for us the past months." Ellen said, "What's your name?" And when she put 2 and 2 together, told Tara, "OMG, hi. Nice to meet you," which followed with Tara yelling that my life drama has affected her life. Then her boyfriend, who I've never seen or heard of, started saying that I made James Renner come after them. Ellen replied, "I'm sorry you've been affected by that, but I don't know who you are." After Tara
Aggro.
continued to berate Ellen, she had to repeat this 10 to 15 times, followed by Tara's boyfriend Collier yelling, "The something Memphis murders. Google it," with him saying that Ellen yelled at Jillian in the green room, which Ellen says she avoided her and no words or eye contact were even shared. This elevator interaction between Tara, Collier, and Ellen led to a large crowd of attendees hearing Tara come out of the elevator screaming "F you, bitch" at Ellen. Following this incident, Joey Toronto is seen in this video approaching Collier and Tara about what just happened.
Go away! Go away! No, go away! Go away! Go away!
Go away, go away.
Aggro.
Go away, go away.
And users on TikTok and Reddit noticed that Tara's caught her smiling at 21 seconds into the video, just seconds after having a meltdown. And as soon as Joey starts explaining that Ellen was just being nice and Tara freaked out on her, this happens.
He was alone, he was alone.
It's insane that an adult woman can go from berating a woman that doesn't even know who she is to crying like she's the victim and causing a scene at the slightest pushback. They were obviously just confused about what the hell Tara was even doing. And then she faked a panic attack over some basic questions. A fan that was with the group recording the incident describes it like this. They watched Joey approach Collier, talked to him calmly. Tara put on the acting performance of her life. Then she turned to us and was like, "Thanks for recording." With no tears, no upsetness, nothing. Just attitude and anger. She got caught. Going back to Ellen's post about this confrontation, she explains how the events management refused to remove Tara and Collier. When my safety was not prioritized, we pulled from our last two events. I was never questioned by Mischief or asked any questions as to what happened. I was simply told that they would not be removed. They had no more programming for the day. When Harris, my producer, went to go alert the line that we would continue to meet and greet and take a picture with every last person, Melissa refused, and they were removed from the convention center by Melissa Anelli, the founder of Mischief Management, planner of Jillian's wedding, and Patrick's old friend. This was witnessed by several people, and they have made statements in writing. And following this, Ellen and Joey moved their now unofficial meet and greet to the lawn outside of the convention center, where they continued to meet and take photos with every single one of their fans. The top
Oops,
on
dropped my
Reddit saying
keyboard.
that their meet and greet line was the longest of any of the podcasts by far. And after this, Ellen and Joey took off, and
Cracked my
the
hands.
festival continued with Patrick, Steve, and Jillian making no mention of the drama whatsoever, with event attendance dropping off significantly. And on Sunday, October 22nd, at the tail end of the festival, Ellen joined Reddit with this post, explaining her side of the situation and her feelings moving forward. Unfortunately, nothing new from what we've already covered, but she does go into some detail about how Tara made her feel. As a survivor and someone who lives with CPTSD and ADHD, I have learned how to manage myself in compromising situations. I have a life in the public eye. This is essential for me. I tried to go on with my events, and it physically caught up to me after the second, and was experiencing a slight physical reaction to the anxiety behind closed doors with trusted friends rather than in the public eye. Having two events left, and feeling very safe and uneasy, I asked them to be removed, for which Mischief said no. They did not ask me any follow-up questions as to what happened, and those podcasters were done with programming. My safety was not a priority. That was made clear by everyone. Following this whole situation, we started to see some missteps from Mischief Management, who, as a reminder, was revealed to be run by the same woman that planned Jillian Pensavale's wedding, Melissa Anelli. And Melissa, after kicking out Ellen and Joey for no reason, posted this on October 23rd to the Mischief Management Instagram page, detailing what happened over the weekend. They write,
So this was mildly entertaining. I just wanted to see how they act. Here's a new Channel 5.
Yeah, my name is Dennis. I've been doing
Dennis.
from Mischief Management.
Oops, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah, my name is
Thank you, Channel 5 with Andrew Callahan. I've liked and sub to your channel. This is San Francisco Streets 5 hours ago.
Dennis. I've been doing fentanyl for some years now, for about 3, 4 years, 5 years. Here in San Francisco, it's an unseen thing, like unseen force that's taking over Frisco. I think everybody on hype on Fetty. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's doing Fetty. It's the fad now.
Do you use any of the harm reduction services they offer out here?
Yeah, I use them. I use them to get what I need. Get my foil, get my tutors, get my shit. You know what I'm saying?
Have you tried to get clean before?
Nah, I haven't. I haven't tried to get clean.
Do you want to?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the fuck? Hey, what happened?
Out on camera, carjacking in San Francisco in broad daylight.
Why is that Prius speeding away backwards?
A group doing interviews for a web show saw a food delivery driver pull up to a restaurant.
The first day he caught a carjacking on the main street. Oh my god. And it just gets worse from there.
The driver left his car running. Someone hopped in and sped off backwards.
And just like that, within 90 seconds of being in San Francisco,
Opportunistic.
I witnessed open-air fentanyl use, a carjacking, and ended up on the nightly news.
Hello, my name's Andrew Callahan, and you're about to watch a documentary on San Francisco streets. I must
Now I will make
message
secure of my child and pray my concoction works. And forsaken are at Bathron's haunt. Very troubling to hear, that is. Very troubling indeed. Adventurer, I have created a cure that I believe will help the afflicted child. Take it to Astronar and give it to the child's parent, Pelturus Whitemoon. To reach Astronar, follow the road south, then east.
Homelessness, shoplifting, gentrification, harm reduction, city history, zoning laws, fentanyl, and so forth. We'll maybe talking to cops, drug dealers, local vigilantes, professional shoplifters, harm reduction workers, pimps, and beyond. Some of the footage ahead may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, back to the streets.
The victim yelling for help as a YouTuber tries to interview him.
Oh, that guy just went in and grabbed a DoorDash order, and then he ran out when he saw his car get jacked. It happens that fast.
Thankfully, the delivery driver's Prius was found a few blocks away, 30 minutes later.
Minutes later, officers arrested 52-year-old Kira Holcomb.
But by then, cell phone footage of the incident had gone viral.
This is a lot of chaos happening.
Something needs to be
For
done.
example, why?
Racking up millions of views and tens of thousands of comments.
Oh my god.
San Francisco is gayer than shit. If a new
Yeah, so I had a Prius stolen from me once at knife point. And it turns out that you can't drive more than the initial drive to wherever it is you go. The minute that you park the car, or even really stop at a stoplight, really, I think, it pretty much shuts off. And without the key fob, which I had, that Prius is just dead. It won't run. It won't go forward. It won't do anything at all. It's an electronic hunk of shit. It won't do anything at all. The security is actually not that bad on that. As soon as whoever that person was stopped the car at a stoplight or whatever, the car immediately shut down. And honestly, this wasn't going to go anywhere. They were going to catch this person either way. Don't steal Prius.
nuke dropped on California, I would actually be happy. You get what you vote for.
And by the way, I got my car back after that. They stole my cell phone. They stole my paycheck that I had just cashed. They stole my Prius and everything in it. And they had it for about 5 hours before they stopped, and the car wouldn't start again. And then I used my cell phone with Google to tell the cops exactly where the fuck the cops were, and they caught them. They caught them in the car.
Thanks, Biden. Thank God I live in Florida. Why is that Jew all gas, no brakes with
Oh my God. So And later on, like that mess was so bad. I lost so much over that. I lost like a phone and a bunch of money and stupid ass shit and cash money and all this. And I don't think the system believed me about. I don't think the system believed me about the money in the car, but it was the truth. And that really hurt that my paycheck was there in that car. The hell is that? Sorry, I think someone's car is backfiring. What was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought here.
Very well done, adventurer. Your actions in the Zoram Strand against the Naga are commendable.
Oh yeah, so that whole mess cost me like.
For the strength and guile of the Naga is well known to the Night Elves. We know this, for we share a history with them. It is a history I care not to repeat. We are not in open war with the Horde, but our peace is fragile. We often find their agents moving against us, but they do so covertly. One such advance was revealed to us from hidden sources in Theramore, claiming that the orcs collect venom from the Pride Wings near Merkfallen Lake, in the Stone Talon Mountains to the south. Orc assassins then use the venom on their secret death raids against the Alliance. If this is true, then we must stop them, adventurer. We must deny them their source of venom.
So I was giving a ride to a friend of a friend who was giving a help to a friend of a friend, and that person robbed me, and I never saw that person's friend again either. So it might have been a setup, I don't know. But I know that, so this cost me like $1,400 between the towing of the car, the two taxi rides that were $100 each, from where they stole the car to get the car back, and all this. The hotel I stayed in, that I stayed in while the whole mess happened. The whole mess was like $1,400 fucking bucks. And I kept thinking, are they going to reimburse me? So I went through the whole thing and testified and got victims assistance and all this. And I waited, and 4.5 years later, I get a check for $1.75. And that still bugs me. That was so much money. That cost me so much money. And they got that guy. He faced some jail time. You know, that was one of the few people, you know, I've actually managed to like put in jail who crossed me. And you know, that guy fucking crazy, dude. And a drug addict, but he was crazy. And that check for $1.75, I never really understood that. In what world was that okay? In what world is a knife robbery and a carjacking only boiled down to $1.75? And I was living out of town when I got that check, and I was like, wow, that's all I got for this? Jesus Christ. Well, at least they brought him to justice, because him stealing the car was devastating to me. I like lost my job out here and all this crap, because they were like, you know, you don't have a way to get to work anymore. And I was like, yeah, I know, it's fucked up. My car was stolen. I got so mad at my job. I was like, so I was robbed at Night Point, about 40 miles south. I was supposed to do a shift tonight. I don't want to do the shift. I was carjacked today, and I'm fucked up. And I just don't want to work tonight. It's going to be hard to focus. And they're like, yeah, that'll be $115 for the taxi ride. And I was like, wow. I've been here 2.5 years, and I've never asked you for a ride or help or anything at all. And the least you could do is hook me a discount on this fucking ride. But nope.
I was amused, but
and that made it a lot easier for me to quit that job. The least they could have done is look out for me when I actually needed it.
Puzzled. I mean, how did that video go viral so fast? And who recorded it?
Andrew
The man who
Callahan.
posted this video, Richie Wynn, is a San Francisco native.
I'm telling you, it's always wild down here. Raw. The crime gotten out of control.
the video was named Richie Wynn, a former cocaine dealer who got caught with a couple 8-balls during COVID and came out of jail sober. Nowadays, he works at a nightclub and films something called the Ciroc Challenge. And sometimes, just sometimes, goes on Fox News.
So Richie used to deal drugs. What's your solution to all this?
Not to discuss bottle service, but rather to discuss his other videos, which
This is
basically
from
consist of
Orange.
him
The
confronting
skill with
homeless people
herbs
on the
and healing
sidewalk.
is great. This cure gives me hope. When before I
right
could
here,
lose.
bro? Was that some crack, mama? You want to do that in front of the kids, man? Clean that shit up, bro. That shit's ugly, bro. My name's Richie Wynn. Basically, I'm kind of like a video vigilante, if you will. I'm kind of taking it into my own hands to film some of the things that I feel like are plaguing the city, mainly the drug use. Hey, bro, you know people got kids and stuff like that. You out
I
here
had hoped Orangeville's cure would save
can't be
real
doing that
lives,
right
but
here.
I
Have a
fear
little
it
fucking
only slowed
respect,
the
man. For
disease
people that pay
running
rent, I
through
don't
my
think the
child.
children should
We
have to
must
see it
find
because
more
it's
powerful
grotesque. A lot of it
medicine.
is,
Thankfully, Orendil spoke to me of further remedies to try should his first one fail. Elune's tear is a type of stone that rests in only one place, the isle on Iris Lake, east of Astronar. Orendil said the stone will wash away corruption. Please, adventurer, bring me Elune's tear, and pray it will end my child's sickness.
So, it's a cliche, but eventually you do want this stuff to not be in your community anymore, even if you are an ex-drug addict.
It's harsh to see. It is very gruesome. Some of these individuals are suffering from also mental illness and picking away at themselves. They are shooting drugs in their neck. They are screaming of obscenities that can be triggering to somebody that is frail and is still developing. I gotta stop smoking that shit and burn the kids, man. You got the kids right here, man. What the fuck you say, man? Arrest these individuals. Take them into custody. This bus stop right here it's a 14 mission. Last year, I shot a viral video. A group of school children were getting off of that bus right there. All right, kids, y'all get home safe, okay? And they had to wade their way through this kind of mess that you're seeing right here, which is like an open-air drug market. You know, people using, people selling. Countless people have seen it. Numerous news outlets have used it.
For Richie, filming San Francisco's decay is a steady side hustle. Last year, Fox News spent $1.6 billion on licensing fees. Essentially, that means acquiring the rights to content, usually scary, juicy content, engineered to generate maximum outrage and piss off their core demographic to bring more eyes to cable TV, which is a dying platform.
Yay, we get active. Democrats approve of racial violence.
And in just this year alone, Fox News has licensed over a dozen of Richie's clips. It's not clear how much they pay Richie per video, but his work has been featured in multiple primetime segments. Here's a couple examples.
When I was a kid, my biggest worry in school was forgetting my locker combo. Now these kids in San Francisco have this. Homeless drug addicts, after getting off the school bus, who the heck thought this was a good idea?
In San Francisco, junkies have more rights than you do, because liberalism spreads worse than a virus from a Chinese lab.
And for the politicians that argue the fact that they think San Francisco is safe right now, go down to Civic Center and pull out your camera phone, and I guarantee you will be met with some type of violence or some type of disgruntled individual. You don't need to be smoking drugs. There's children that live in this building right here. So maybe you should take it somewhere else. You're not getting this car, bitch. Come on, bro. Leave her alone, bro. Who the fuck you think you're talking to, punk? It's an ecosystem that has thrived off of the illegal drug trade, the lax laws for stealing and reselling stolen goods. Oh yeah, the shoplifting is wild.
Recent high-profile cases of organized retail theft have cast an ugly pall on cities like San Francisco.
You know, I've seen the people come in, take whatever off the shelves, and just walk right out of it.
More than a dozen Walgreens stores have shuttered. Target has limited its hours.
It was happening so much here at this Whole Foods that's in my building that they had to shut down. The employees didn't feel safe. The place was only open for a year. Oh, it was only open for a year, and this was their flagship store. It was a gorgeous store.
Yep, flagship store. Wow, like their original Whole Foods store, they had to shut it down because the homeless people just swarmed that motherfucker. Probably went inside, just started taking food right out of the fucking, like, the bins. This is suck of shit.
How you doing out here, bro?
I'm living the best I can. Unfortunately, I'm living these mean streets.
Yeah.
Still alive.
You've been doing drugs and shit?
Absolutely. It's the life we live.
What's your drug of choice?
Crack cocaine. No, kidding. Fentanyl.
How long have you been doing that for?
About a year.
What do you think like made you want to first get into it?
I'm opiate dependent. I've been dependent on opiates since I was 16. Broke my leg, broke my ankle. I've been doing Percocets, Oxycontin, Big Pharma. You know, it's the biggest reason why a lot of people are addicted to these opiates, you know.
The Sackler family is one of the richest families in America. The source of that wealth was for many years Oxycontin, the addictive painkiller considered one of the initial sparks for the nation's opioid crisis. A crisis that has already left more than 450,000 Americans dead and continues today.
I'm dependent on it, you know. Without it, I don't function as well, you know.
How'd you break your leg?
Fighting, actually. I was in a fight, yeah. 16, 17, high school, yeah, freshman year, second, sophomore year. My sister was making out with some fucking roid rager, so I swung on him and my buddy grabbed me. I don't know what happened. My ankle ended up getting snapped on the stair.
Have you tried to like quit before?
Yeah, I did about two and a half years this last run. Had my life together and ended up hurting my back on the job, working in construction over in Livermore. Relapsed and got evicted. Lived in my van. Became real once I lost my van. It's a trip. So my goal is to try to stay alive and stay, you know, I don't want to die before my mom, you know what I mean? That's my biggest goal. Is she shouldn't have to bury her son.
Where's your mom at now?
North Carolina.
When's the last time you talked to her?
7 years, 7 years. It's been a while.
7 years.
I turned 38.
Does she know you're out here?
No one does. Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom. If you see me, I'm still alive. I know I look like shit.
I'm still alive.
But that was in
Alive on arrival.
I got jumped, so.
Honestly, bro, you don't look that bad.
Thank you.
Yeah. How do you get money?
The boost in life, as you can see.
Oh shit. Fresh licks.
Said fresh licks, you said. We got stuff to get by. Stay warm. Got some shirts. Got my Ben and Jerry's. You know what I mean?
Ben and Jerry's.
Sell the shit that you boost.
It sells itself. Everyone loves a good deal. I know it's not a good thing to do, but it is what it is. It's our life. We could be doing worse things. A lot of these big companies are all fucking write-offs anyways.
How much free ice cream? I want the ice cream.
No, that one.
What flavor is it? What flavor is it? Yo, I haven't tried that one. Send it. I'm gonna right now. I'm gonna eat right fucking now once I give him the cigarettes.
It is what it is. It's either that or I starve tonight. It's all around shitty. It's not fun. You know what I mean? I'd rather work. This shit's hard.
Ice cream's more addicting than fentanyl. I'm not gonna lie. If fentanyl didn't make me dope sick, I would be more addicted to ice cream. Once I'm done and sober from fentanyl, I'm still gonna be addicted to ice cream.
San Francisco's locking up their ice cream.
Yeah, so what happened to the ice cream, bro?
We had to lock the shit up because they came in here, they started stealing all kind of shit, trash bags, and that's like every night too.
So it is not only to the Democrats that we have to fix this problem, but I'll say it to the Republicans as well. We're handling. We're handling.
Hey, bad bitch alert.
Y'all, what's happening? My birth certificate say female, and it do say San Francisco, but I'm homeless.
Oh. Can we talk to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. So how you doing, Andrew? Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Okay, so my name is Miss J. Vera Williams. The last corporate job I had was Ted Baker as a senior manager in 2022, making $2,700 every 2 weeks, and that's still not being enough to, number one, solidify safe housing and to live off of.
How much do you think you need a month to survive well in San Francisco?
$5,000. But I'm a person that would categorize under high priority, consider I have HIV. And I live at a SU code, so it's basically like temporary housing until they find new housing.
Due to having HIV, Miss J. Williams qualifies for San Francisco's Single Room Occupancy, or SRO program, which provides at-risk, unhoused people with access to low-cost housing, usually in 8 by 10-foot rooms, in one of the many dilapidated residential hotels in the Tenderloin neighborhood for up to 30 days.
The city calls single-room occupancy buildings, or SROs, the last housing option before homelessness.
Currently, 15,000 people live in SROs in San Francisco, and their average monthly rent is $895.
I just moved there, but I was twice physically assaulted 4 times due to being trans.
What do you want, a room at the Four Seasons?
I don't want a room at the Four Seasons. I just want a room that's safe. I got bit by a pit bull last week. I just got out the hospital.
Oh
from literally somebody saying in the Latino dialect, "Get that," and their pit bull biting me on my ankle.
Well, that's just because, you know, San Francisco just gotten out of hand. Where are you from?
I'm from here.
You're from San Francisco?
Yeah, my
What
father's. I'm from Fillmore, Hazen Central. I pay cash money for these titties.
Hell yeah, how much?
$30,043. I Lord have a banks or something like that. Lord, this is like real deal Holyfield, and it's a crock of shit. You cannot open a door to nowhere. You can't open no door. Like, I could have bought a house. I could be opening a door. I could be on these streets right now. You can buy these titties later when you buy.
Oh, welcome back, man who stands. What's up? I'm watching the new Andrew Callahan video, Channel 5 News, about homelessness in San Francisco, and it's pretty bad.
That's the message to the kids. Wait to buy titties after getting the master's degree.
Please, all that Botox and Rotox and Kim Kardashian, please wait. Education, spirituality, and really doing the work every day. Go find me, y'all. Miss J. Williams.
San Francisco, California. Frisco.
You found it. Thank you, adventurer. The old city of Zoram holds many secrets, and this statuette may be the key to many of them. I fear the ancient statuette's secrets will remain forever hidden, unless you find the key to its ancient lock. That key is a ring, the Ring of Zoram. It belonged to the rulers of this city before the waves of the Sundering drowned it. For years, the ring was lost, but the Naga have recently found it. Their leader, Ruzul, dwells on an isle on the northern edge of Zoram. Please, adventurer, retrieve the ring for me.
Go up there and look at it.
That's the discovery of the Comstock lode sent millions of Americans headed west.
An explosion of migration from the ends of the earth.
For a while, shit was going pretty good. Until 1906, when a horrific earthquake came and destroyed 80% of the city, taking 7,000 lives.
San Francisco is gone.
7,000 lives, Jesus. Oh, deleted your message. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a sensitive mod. I don't see your message, so I don't know what it did. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, it's not reflecting it here.
They were totally wrong.
San Francisco was rebuilt.
By the mid-century, it became the epicenter of counterculture. First, the beatniks, then the beat poets, then the hippie movement kicked off, which brought over 100,000 self-described flower children to the Haight-Ashbury, aka Hashbury neighborhood, to do acid and hang out.
Oh, I live 15 minutes. I live 15 minutes north of San Fran, over the Golden Gate, literally in Oakland and San Fran for years. It's a shithole. Literally, human shit everywhere on the street. Yeah, I've seen some cities like that before, yeah. I've seen some areas in New York like that, in South Central. I changed up the spelling to be the auto mode. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, sorry about that, buddy. I don't mean to make you retype. It's to protect the kids.
The Bay, the Hells Angels.
For a while, I had a psycho, you know.
Were going strong. The Black Panther Party was becoming more powerful than ever. And a young journalist named Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, it's gotten out of hand. I don't have the solutions to these problems we have. It's like a combination. I can tell you what I think they are, which is like a combination of overpopulation, lack of critical thinking and education and preparation. And I think there's a bit too many barriers between people and jobs, like identification and, you know, address and stuff like that. And I think fentanyl wrecked the streets, and they're going to do drugs no matter what. And I think you should legalize or they should legalize and stop putting people in jail. And I don't know how to solve the homeless problem how it is right now, but we got to start making steps. I just don't know what. There's a lot of empty houses in this world.
The SF innovation wave just kept rolling. A couple years later,
I think of all the empty pieces of real estate and houses, and then all the homeless, and I think there's your problem. We made more houses and cars than there was humans, and I don't know. I think now at this point, we used to think of it as like the person facing the most dire straits in this country was our weakest link, and our weakest link was the one that needed the most help. Now I think it's like, oh, you're the weakest link, well then just die on the streets of fentanyl and bathed in your own shit. No one seems to really care. I care, but I don't have a solution, and I feel like the best way I can show that I care is solving the issue. And I think about it all the time. How do you systematically, logistically, like, end the homeless problem drastically and fast? And I don't. It's such an intrinsic problem that I think it's going to take as much time as it did getting in this issue as it will to get out, which isn't good.
Burning Man begins on Baker Beach. The People's Temple begins in the Fillmore District. And the Castro District emerged as a mecca for gay men, with the rise of local leaders like Harvey Miller. And then one smart guy named Steve Jobs had a pretty bright idea. Macintosh, the foundational tech company that led to the boom of Silicon Valley, which brought over 1,000 tech companies to the Bay Area in just 5 years.
Bay Area, Silicon Valley.
Yahoo, eBay, Dell.
Dell built a desktop just for me.
Intel. Microsoft.
I'm Bill Gates.
Facebook. Hey, how's it going? This is our first live video. Twitter.
And none of them look freaky like the Zuck. Only the Zuck has that special Zuck freakiness. Cooking some meats, cooking some meats. Oh my God. Oh man, I'm cooking some meats. You said a lot of people don't want to get help. Yeah, I know. I was one of them. They don't want a job. They don't just want to live free, responsibility, and get free food and shelter. Yep. Which is not good. I don't have a solution to it. When I was homeless, it felt like a big stack of systemic problems. Like, I could get robbed. I had to get a tent. I had to get training. I had to learn how to be out there and had to know how to deal with the winter. I needed a place to get a shower. I needed an address to get a job. Without an address, you couldn't get a job. Without a job, you couldn't get an address. And all these other things. And it is like when you're in that situation, it's often because you want to be, but solutions don't really present themselves that fast, short of like getting a job. So that's mainly what I did. Most of the time when I was on the streets, I was either like working as a construction flagger, or I was like a drug dealer, or even there was this point where I had worked so much construction and dealt so much drugs that I was able to pay for the rental on a car and go back to work driving Uber. And it was an interesting time for me. One day I was in the back of the coffee shop, dirty, disgusting. I stank because I was only able to get a shower like every 2-3 days. Smoking cigarettes, totally spun out on meth and totally wasted. And then the next day I was sober. I had showered and shaved. I had a job. I had a car. And I had a girlfriend. And it was the girl that everybody wanted too. And they were like, dude, yesterday you were like this bummed out fucking crack, fucking meth addict sitting in the back of the coffee house 12 hours a day. And now today you're like this happened to me. And like today you're like an Uber driver with a girlfriend, living in Airbnbs with a nice job that's paying between 30 and $50 an hour. And I was like, yep, never stop, never give up, always keep working. I was homeless, but I kept trying and I kept building it. And I saw my opportunity and I saved up $500 and I rented a car and I went and got my old job back and I started working again. And within 4 days, I was like driving up to the back of the coffee house with the hottest girl in the place, like, you know, ordering the most expensive coffee and like sitting down for her, I don't care about coffee, and sitting down, you know, like in nice clothes and a nice job and feeling good and smiling at the people, and they're like, wow, you smell and look good, what the hell happened? Oh, yeah, I got a job and just got my ass off the streets. It's what happens. You get a job and you figure out some opportunity and you work really hard and you think about it and you get on the internet and you search and you do what you have to get by and you save up that money and you take it seriously and you get the help from the people that you need it from. And I took this wager and I just, like, you know, took a swing at it and I left the streets and I didn't ever go back. Well, I did. I'm sorry. I went back. No, I never went back. I never saw another night on the streets after that. I just saw assault and being chased and stuff like that, and assaulted, and I put a man in jail. But yeah, like, you know, it's like, but I never really did ever. Once I worked my way up off the street again after 5.5 years, I think it was, I didn't ever see the streets again. Because at that point, it was like that thing that Manorstans mentioned here that I think is the crux of the problem. They don't want a job. They don't want to get help. And I was the worst example of this. I was like lost. I had identity issues. I didn't trust my family. I didn't trust my friends. I was a drug addict. I was miserable. I was dating a junkie who would disappear on me. I was just, you know, it was a bad time for me. And like, you know, and one day I woke up and I was like, no, I don't need to be this or do this anymore. And I just took off and I decided not to be on the streets anymore. And pretty much overnight I wasn't. And this is something fundamental about it. Now, not everybody's like this. Some of these people are like crippled people on the streets with no hope and real bad drug addictions and stuff. They can't just pull themselves up by their fucking bootstraps like I did. And I did a lot of crazy things to make that happen, you know. I did a lot of social engineering. I was living in a burnt out restaurant, so I had a permanent place where I could sleep and wake up rested each day so I could continue to work. My best friend was letting me shower somewhere. The kids in the coffee house were social with me, even though they knew I was a homeless drug addict. And they were okay with me. They didn't pass judgment. They even socially were there for me. And eventually it went from like they were bumming me cigarettes in the back of the coffee house to me paying them $100 to drive an entire 10-hour shift for me for $10 an hour and shit like that. You know, just because it went from like, you know, me bumming a cigarette from them homeless on the streets to me employing one of them, you know. And this is that thing. When you want to get off the streets, you will. And when you don't and you need help and you're messed up and you've got a drug addiction and you just don't want help and you've got that deep depression and stuff, we need some kind of system in place to address that kind of hopelessness, because I think sometimes it's alcoholism, sometimes it's heroin and opioids and fentanyl. I think sometimes it's abuse and rape and stigma. There's a lot of reasons that people end up on the fucking streets, but it's you know, the stone that the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone. And I kind of believe this, and I don't like quoting biblically. I just like sublime. And I think it's a good quote that kind of fits this. If you cast people out, if you make them pariahs and you cast them out of this society, and they're forced to live this skid row lifestyle where it feels better to be on the streets with no responsibilities than it does to go work and have a job and drag yourself up and go pay insurance and go pay cell phone bills and go pay taxes and stuff. And I did both sides of it, and I understand now. the real problem is not that they don't want to do it. I don't think it's that they're psychologically so fucked up that they don't want to do it. It's not that they don't want to do it. I think I'm actually okay with that. Okay, maybe they don't want to be adulting. Maybe they don't want to be anything but a drug addict. Maybe they've been a victim or cast down to the streets. Maybe they've got hereditary stuff with drugs and alcohol and DV and all the shit that goes on, you know, in our ghettos and in our reservations and in our fucking inner cities and Five Points and Denver and all these other fucking places. And I don't know what the solution is, but I know that just casting our hands up and saying they don't want to help themselves isn't it. We definitely need to do something. I just don't know what it is. You know, in India, what they generally do, but see, India is blessed with hot air and nice climate most of the year. And so they build big teepees and tents and ashrams, and they use the people to nurse and care for the people who need nursing caring. And when they're better, they go farming and they go doctoring and they raise the kids and they help the compound and they help the ashram, and they do all their labor for free. They donate money if they have it, if they get another job, and they drag themselves up from the streets, and they get the assistance they need from the ashram. And we want, one thing I do fundamentally believe from a very good documentary that I watched on Netflix about this Italian heroin rehab documentary, right? There was a really great documentary on Netflix about this guy called Sampa, Senza the Savior, which is about this Italian guy in the 70s who saw that Italy was being destroyed by heroin, and he turned it around 100% and stopped the deaths and stopped all of the shittiness and all the drugs and the problems and stuff. He turned it over like in the 70s completely. And how he did this was he took his family's money and he empowered drug addicts to empower other drug addicts. And so my thing about the homeless people is maybe we put them up in a when we're not doing football games, maybe we put them up in the you know, where like the Saints Dome and Mile High Field and all this, and we get them the medical care and the food and the shelter, and we let them sleep on the fucking land when it's not being used there, and you police the zone and you don't allow drugs. You give them the option, I think, and you say that, well, this guy, he's been clean for 3 months because we helped him, and he's going to help you, and he's going to hold your hair while you're puking, kicking the drug and all this. He's going to help you get clean. He's going to give you a sponge bath like somebody gave him a sponge bath, and he's going to stick with you for 6 weeks. And this is what this documentary was like. It was like, you know, he's going to stick with you. This whole group of people is going to stick with you, you know, to see you through this drug addiction, and the cure is the people. The cure, to me, the cure for drug addiction is drug addicts, believe it or not, because the only people in the world that understand the ravages of drug addiction and the help that is needed to get out of it, and the support and the backing, and how this guy Vincenzo Mussolini created a rehab center that had 100% success rate for like 15 years until he started using the money and got kind of corrupt like a cult leader and stuff. But cheap heroin flooded Italy, and he saved like 30,000 people. And how he did this is he used the homeless drug addicts. He would rehabilitate them, lock them in rooms till they weren't sick anymore, and then he would help them get clean. And when they were clean, he would use them to help other people get clean. And when they were clean, he would use them to help other people get clean. And it started this whole huge commune on his land of like 3,000 or 4,000 people all looking out for each other. And within 5 years, the relapse rate had dropped to 0. The people were off the streets. They were working jobs and had cars and had families and lives again. And I don't know. I don't think the solution is throwing our hands up saying these people don't want help. I think that's the tribalist view. I don't know. I want somebody talking about fucking answers. Now, not to ignore a man who stands here, I'm going to get to the point, but, you know, the homeless are a problem for only one reason. Our presence raises the question, who owns the land? The same might be understood in the Native American community or any of the other communities in this country. Like, our presence raises the question, who owns the land? That's the real sick problem about the homelessness. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so bad. They wouldn't be shitting in the streets. There's you know. And so Manu Sands said, yeah, it's so easy to slip through the cracks. They don't, you know, through the cracks and turn your back on society. Some people just need to have someone there to help them when they stumble backwards to bad habits. Yep. And so, like XKVCD Hat Guy says, my two takeaways about this entire situation, right before I get on to something more happier, because I've been through it, I've seen it, I've been there, is we have to use the people to fix the problems that the people have, from the school shootings to the systemic racism on down to the homelessness. We have to use the victims of those crimes to help rehabilitate the new victims of those crimes. That's a solution. It's the best solution that I know of. I found it in some backwards ass documentary about you know, about a cult leader. But before he was ever corrupt, he did actually basically stop the ravages of heroin in all of the country of Italy, all of America. We haven't conquered addiction. We have wars across the land and drug addicts and fentanyl ruining everything, and the cartel and the cut and all the stuff that's going on in the background and the middlemen and the Potomac two-step. And I know two things about this subject. It's two things. One is what Vincenzo Mussolini learned about rehabilitation. Is it's not wards, and it's not, I mean, it sometimes is hospitals, but it's not like that. That's only if they're in crisis. What it really is necessary is a community of people who understand the barriers and have defeated the barriers. That is what is necessary for rehabilitation. It is not jail or shame or methadone or anything else like that. It is a community that is there with you 24/7 through the 6 months it takes to kick that monkey off your back. And if you want the relapse rate to drop, you must keep that community alive. And that's where Vincenzo ended up being a sinner. He let his community fall apart when he became essentially so popular in the country of Italy that he was a cult leader without even wanting to be, because he had saved so many people's lives from the ravages of heroin in the 80s that 30,000 people's families were like, this is the greatest man in the country. It was a road to fame that I thought about. I learned about this about 3.5, 4 years ago, I think, like 3 years ago, something. I saw it like right after it came out, and I was like, man, I can see how, like, fuck trying to be president the way that Donald Trump tried to do it. I would try to solve the homelessness problem and the drug addiction problem by supplying the community that these people need, the care that they need. In the morning, they must have a meal. In the morning, they must have a shower. In the morning, they must talk to somebody. In the morning, they must see the sunlight. They must not be pariah. They must not be separated from our culture. They must not be judged by anybody but a judge. They must not be cast out by Christians who don't understand the ravages of the judgment and how bad it is. They must not be treated so badly. And on the other side, the only people that seem to be helping them are the Christians. So let's smoke some meats.
Hey everyone, we are live from my backyard where I am smoking these meats, meat like a brisket. I'm making meats now. Someone asked me, do I smoke meats? It's gonna be delicious. Yeah, if I smoke meat, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Give me the sock, give me the sock. See you see sock. Say my name, baby, give me the sock, give me the sock. See you sock. Smoking meats, hello to you. Thanks for hanging out with me in my backyard while I'm smoking these meats too. Meat is, it takes a long time sitting around with my Wi-Fi. I like racing. Grilling meats, racing cars are two of the most fun things that
And meanwhile, Mark Zuckerberg makes $10 billion and smokes these meats.
Oh no, it seems I was daydreaming again.
That's why I made clear that you have had subpoenas. Is that correct?
Mr. Zuckerberg, what is Facebook doing to prevent foreign actors from interfering in U.S. elections?
We are smoking these meats.
I don't know why that's his job, but okay.
I'm making meats now. Someone asked me, do I smoke meats? That's gonna be delicious. Yeah, I smoke meat. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Give me the zuck.
Give me the zuck. Give me the zuck. Zuck. Give me the zuck. Give me the zuck.
Smoke lemon chicken, smoke salmon, you'll love it. Bison sirloin, ribs and sausage. We got some more pork ribs. You don't want to risk it.
You don't want to risk it?
The sweet baby Riz. I want my baby back Riz. You know, it's a weekend, man. Bring up the purple shirt. I wear the gray shirt to work. While I was smoking meats earlier in the day, I started a triathlon. It's not a long mile, it's a long way. Biked about 20 miles, and then I had to deal with something. So I had to avoid smoking these meats.
Senor Zuckerberg. Senor Zuckerberg. Mr. Zuckerberg.
Oh no, once again, thoughts of smoked meats have caused me to drift into a land of imagination.
That is destroying our democracy. And you have to ask yourself how you will be remembered.
For smoking these meats, meat like a brisket. I'm making meats now. Someone asked me, do I smoke meat? It's gonna be delicious. Yeah, I smoke meat, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, smoking these meats, meat like a brisket. I'm making meats now. Someone asked me, do I smoke meat? It's gonna...
God damn it. Stupid ass fucking memes. Ugh.
2019, San Francisco's GDP rose to $534.56 billion, making it the 8th largest economy in the entire world. Good news? Not really.
Everything that you think that it is really not what it is.
344% rent hike.
Neil has been
344
a month rent, but his landlady recently informed him.
Oh, good. It's only $4,000 a month. You only have to sell blowjobs on the corner on top of that fucking 5-figure a year job. It's okay. San Francisco selling blowjobs on the corner is probably what we do to pay for all this rent. So yeah, you know, you're probably working in the securities exchange, making a good 95 grand a year. That's not going to pay your rent. 95 grand a year is what you pay for rent. So yeah, if you actually want to eat, you better sell blowjobs after hours on the corner if you want to live in San Francisco. And I wish I was joking, but I'm not. That's actually how the finances literally work out here. If you're making 95 grand a year, you better get to selling blowjobs on the corner if you want to pay rent in San Francisco, because that's not enough.
Raising the rent to $8,000 a month.
Oh, good. So now it's oh, good. So what is that? That's 96,000. I'm sorry, guys. I lowballed it at 84. It's actually 96. It's 96. Yeah.
Cisco is a fucked up place. Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's fucked up.
Minimum wage is the same. No parking. If you get a parking
It's fucked up.
That's a whole check right there.
It's fucked up, man.
You need to work 3 jobs just to live in a...
Or sell blowjobs on the corner and work one good job. Would you rather work one cushy $95,000 a year job and only 300 blowjobs on the corner? Or would you rather just do 90,000 blowjobs on the corner? Or for $1? I don't know. Something about blowjobs on the corner.
In a 1-bedroom in...
I missed what you said. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's over to the... Yeah, I know. And with roaches and you know, crack.
We can't afford to live here. I'm born and raised here.
No. This is what happened to Denver. And it it really affected me. And so when I bought my home, I was like, oh my God, I have dodged the biggest fucking bullet in my fucking life. I dodged some bullets in my life. Like, for instance, literally have bullets fired at me and dodged them. And then there's been times where people have leveled guns at my head and all types of shit. And I'm just saying, that was the real bullet that I dodged. Homelessness. Yeah, when I bought my home, did I tell you how proud I am that I own my home? Let me tell you. Oh my God.
Can't even afford to live here, but I do hard work, trapping.
Welcome to San Francisco.
A little bit of
Trapping.
here and there.
A little bit here and there.
And I make do. I make do with what I do.
Yep.
So you can have a job in the city, but you need other forms of income. So
like blowjobs on the corner while you make 95 grand as a mid-level software manager or whatever, admin or whatever the fuck. Screw you. You reset the calendars or whatever.
Something you need to be doing 3 or 4 other things to survive in the city.
3 or 4 other blowjobs a day at $200 a pop. Yeah, you still might not make that rent. I mean, what's it cost? Like, there's all this other stuff that they don't talk about too.
You cannot just have one job.
In terms of cost of living, yeah, like transportation isn't cheap, the gas isn't cheap, the food isn't cheap.
Possible, unless you're like a lawyer, you work in tech, or you would trick.
And even then, and even if you're working in tech, if you're only making $100 grand a year, you might be a trick too. Yeah, and I'm not kidding.
Within just 10 years, rent in San Francisco nearly tripled, while the minimum wage remained the same, leading to a mass exodus of native San Franciscans.
You got San Franciscans moving to like Vegas, Texas, New York, Atlanta.
And a mass influx of what are colloquially known as tech bros. This created quite a few
tech bros. They did this to Denver too. Yeah, they all came to Denver because of the marijuana revolution. I don't blame them. I loved it too, and I voted for it, and I was there for every minute of it. They came to marijuana and they did their whole green rush, kind of like the gold rush, but it was a green rush. Except they paid all the rent, and they willingly paid all that rent. And when the landlords saw them coming, like a year before, they raised all their rent by like $1,000. Everybody in the city raised the rent by $1,000 within like a 4-year period. And the reality was, because those guys came to my city in numbers of 36,000 a month, and all of them were immediately taking apartments that were $2,000 a month. All the gods and managers and landlords went feeding frenzy, gold rush, green rush crazy. And they're like, oh my God, it's a marijuana wellness, well-being revolution, and everybody's going to be rich and everything. Yeah, the people who were receiving the rent got rich, but I don't even think really the marijuana people got even that rich. The people receiving the rent got rich, I would say, because all those tools that moved to my city, they were paying $2 grand a month. Is suddenly my rent went from right the year that Amendment 64 hit and the marijuana was legalized, both medicinal and recreational, like fucking in Colorado, overnight the rent went from $750 to $1,250, and that's a significant. I'm talking overnight, as in like 1 week it was normal to pay $790. Suddenly you couldn't find overnight, like the next week, you couldn't find a single one piece of crap like roached out studio anywhere on East Colfax where you're liable to get your ass shot for going out the front fucking door, right? Like was $1,250. And then these places that I wouldn't have lived in for $500 a month were suddenly like $1,100. And like that was just insane. And then it just got worse from there. And now we've got San Fran and Denver where it currently is. Because I mean, the traffic is as bad as LA. The people spend money as bad as LA. They think that rent money is just going to keep coming from somewhere, but all they really had was a big boom that kind of died out a little bit. They all opened dispensaries that all died out. And all this other stuff, and I'm just saying, that money, it wasn't going to last forever, and you guys paying the rent was unacceptable. It screwed the city. So many locals I knew left the city after that.
One, many of these tech bros had no cultural or family connection to the city.
It's like what happened to Detroit. It's like they wanted to Detroit Denver because they're like, oh well, Denver's experiencing this marijuana boom the way that Detroit witnessed their car auto boom, and you know, their car maker boom. And we're just going to ride this out forever. And no, it turns out almost nothing is forever. No, even cars might not be forever, at least not in their gasoline form, you know? And so, yeah, things change.
Plus,
The most depressing thing I've ever seen in my entire fucking life was this. I'm serious. I've seen Faces to Death, and I've seen rape videos, and I've seen all types of fucked up shit on the dark web back when I was like 15 years old, before we knew any fucking better. And I'm desensitized, but still, the saddest thing that I've ever seen in my fucking life isn't some tearjerker movie or, you know, the death of Martin Luther King or John Lennon or something. It's this documentary called Detropia, where they document the death of a fucking American city. That one got to me.
They weren't really there to stay. For example, the average residency for a Twitter or Facebook employee in San Francisco is 9 to 12 months, and many of them were bussed in and out of the city.
Should try 9 to 12 weeks.
These people angry at what they see as growing income inequality in the city.
Now, before we continue,
I remember, there was this weird thing, right? Weird correlative behavior, logical correlative behavior with the community and the people around me. When the rent was suddenly double, it was like 45% hike or something like that, when it was suddenly basically double or whatever it was. Like, something else happened too, which was that like when they started paying the rent, and I lost my train of thought here kind of, but when they started paying the rent, I remember now, the jobs, like all my life, it was this thing about like, don't quit your job. You'll have to show in your resume why. Don't quit a lot of jobs. You'll have a bad resume. No one cares. No one cares if you lie on the resume, but they do care if you have a bad resume, and you shouldn't lie about whether you got quit or fired or something like that. So don't quit a lot of jobs. If you take it, this is something my mother taught me, and a lot of people my generation kind of believed, is if you take a lot of jobs, just keep them as long as you can, because if you look like you leave jobs all the time, it makes your resume look like shit, right? But then overnight, I would say within a year of about when the rent got too high in Seattle and Denver and San Fran, all that shit, right around, I would say 2010 at the very latest, right after the housing crisis boom and the banking collapse, right? Like, it just became unacceptable to pay that much rent. It's something else that happened in the scene with all the workers and everything, and in the proletariat, was it immediately overnight became socially acceptable to have a bad resume, and it became socially acceptable to have evictions. It was never socially acceptable my whole life to be evicted from an apartment. It was never socially acceptable to hop jobs like one a week or something like that, unless you were really trying to like make your way in a new city that you had just moved to or something like that. Most people didn't respect it if you hopped around jobs. But then within a year, it was totally fine for me to work whatever job I could get, whatever job I could fucking get, no matter what it did to my resume. At that point, it was like, take the job if it's there, you know? And suddenly my resume looked like shit. I had like part-time labor as a construction guy, and that was my main, but it was part-time because I was homeless. I was like driving taxi when I could, and I still had a car. And like when I wasn't doing that, I was doing food delivery and fixing laptop screens. I left several cashier jobs because of my girlfriend and all these other things, and we were evicted several times. And I don't know. And honestly, the year before that collapse, I would call it the rent collapse, where everything became too expensive to live in this country. Right before, like that year, that sort of living that used to be unacceptable in this country used to get called like a deadbeat or a bum or a loser if you had a bad resume like that. Or what would they call it? Like in Rambo, they called it drifter. You were like basically called a drifter, and it was considered to be like socially inept inept and socially bad if you were like a drifter type, like the depiction of Rambo 1, where he goes to war with the cops, you know, because he's just some drifter trying to pass through a Vietnam vet, and they push him too far, they delouse him in the comatorium and piss him off, so he just goes to war with them with guns and shit. And, you know, this whole thing was about, like, you know, it's like, if it becomes socially acceptable to have a bad resume, socially acceptable to have evictions, socially acceptable to be bouncing around paycheck to paycheck, week to week, working part-time and part labor jobs and doing gig labor, maybe you've even got some drug dealing or prostitution in your history, that kind of thing. Like, you know, you like that was socially unacceptable up until that year when the rent went insane. But then when the rent went insane, and like, I know when it was like September of 2009 or something like that, or maybe it was like January, but the rent went insane overnight. It went insane in the entire country, and suddenly it was socially acceptable to be essentially a drifter. And I think that is also a systemic problem that leads to homelessness, is when it became socially acceptable in this community to have a broken, fucked up resume with lots of jobs and lots of quits and lots of fucking fires on it and all this. It's socially acceptable to bounce around and move all the time, and socially acceptable to not have roots and commitments and such. You know, that's when we kind of lost our family values at that point. And when we couldn't pay the rent anymore, it didn't matter how many fucking jobs we worked. It didn't matter how bad it looked on the resume. You couldn't get a job anyways. Everybody was starving and fucked up. And so by the time that I was a drug dealer in like 2019, like everybody I knew was either selling their, but not everybody. There was the people who had been given money by their parents and allowed to have jobs and hadn't been led astray by drug addictions or problems, or God forbid, the system, which is usually the real causality with druggies and bandits and such. Is the system. Almost everybody I knew had faced the system for something or the other. Almost everybody I knew had faced alcoholism. Almost everybody I knew had faced drug addiction. Almost everybody I knew my age was promiscuous or married, one or the other. There was no in between. And everybody I knew was like a whore or married, one or the other. And it was just weird. It was just weird. Like, and I call this like the death of America. And I believe it was the desperation that the rental crisis caused in all of us, where it was suddenly okay to live as an Uber driver in your car, you know? That was actually like normal. People didn't frown on me for doing it. Like, you know, when I got back in the Uber driver and stopped being homeless forever, and got back in the car again, the first thing I started doing was sleeping in the car so I didn't have to pay for Airbnbs and motels for shit unless my girlfriend was with me. And like, you know, and that kind of like plastic fantastic living, paycheck to paycheck daily living is what the rental crisis like did to the country that we can't come back from. And that's why they want to wallow in their shit on the fucking like sidewalk, because they know that even if they were to work like a fucking full-time job for the entire career year, they would only make maybe 36 to 48 grand, and the rent is 48 grand. The rent is, you know, in some of these cities is 36 to 48 grand.
I'd like to mention that San Francisco's gentrification was not explicitly...
So they should be running for the hills. There's another point that comes to mind that what I think about a lot when I think of the California gentrification and the richness and the whole snobbery thing and the gods and clods thing and all this, like, oh, you're poor, well, I'm rich kind of stuff, where they just sort of ignore each other and all this. It's an old quote from, I believe it was a book. I think it was maybe Fahrenheit 9/11 or something like that. When Michael Moore wrote a book, he talked about how the greatest anger he dealt with in his entire life was watching the LA riots and not understanding why the hood went to burn the hood and not just travel a few miles over to the Rodeo Drive and sack all of Hollywood and all of Beverly Hills. And sack places with money. Don't sack the hood, right? And that's what comes to mind when I think of the rent. At that point, They're so blinded by how starved they are, by the terrible rent problem and all this, that they'll go shoplifting into Walgreens and fill their carts with razors and shit like this, right? Electric razors and shit like this. They don't care. They'll do whatever to get by on their drug addiction or whatever. They know what that rent is and they're not paying it. They're living in a car or something like that. And the shit's fucked up. But you got to kind of wonder, like, when it's that desperate, like, why would they want to try? When they know that if they were to go back into the straight and narrow and get off the Dodge and stop ripping and running and get off the drugs, go back to work for $36,000 to $48,000 a year at a nice job being like they don't beat the shit out of you or threaten you all the time or whatever, right? Or hold your probation over your head or whatever the fuck, right? Like a nice job that you can actually stand and do. Say like you work you work construction or something as a flagger or something. I don't know, something you can do. And you're doing okay and you've worked a whole year and you realize that all of that money, if not all of it, at least 3/4 of it went to rent. And sure, you were able to pay for the barber and you were able to pay for transportation. You were able to pay for food. You were able to pay for mental and dental and medical and dental and all this. And you were able to get by a little bit better. Maybe you were even able to buy a PlayStation 5 if you were budgeting careful enough, right? And you're working pretty hard. At the end of the year, you technically got no further and had less fun than that motherfucker on the streets who just cast his fucking arms into the air. Now, despair is the worst disease that mankind can ever experience in my estimation. I actually wrote a song about this called Trouble Travels in Threes. And the lyrics of that was like, I've noticed that, like, I got so used to seeing people who give up at the first sign of trouble. And as I grow better and stronger, I know with heavy regret and sorrow that trouble always travels in threes. And the metaphor that I'm getting at here is it's not that you lost your money or your life or your girlfriend or whatever the fuck and you're destitute now and you're fucked. And it's not that you're homeless and you've fallen down to the streets like a Tupac song. It's always that trouble travels in threes. It's the despair that you feel afterward that makes it impossible for you to pull yourself back up by your bootstraps or use whatever Lutheran fucking, like Hollywood reference, like, oh, a mouse falls into a bucket of butter, or sorry, a bucket of cream, and two mice fall into a bucket of cream, and one churns until it becomes butter and climbs out. The other one gives up and despairs and with abandon and drowns, right? And that's the difference, though. When you know that when you walk the straight and narrow path and you even like give up the drugs and you change and you become the perfect person again and you come back to society and stuff, when you do this, it doesn't matter. You're still not going to have a better life than somebody who is able to just cast all of their commitments and all of their problems to the wayside and just get high instead. It's going to be a lot more fun to get high instead and ignore all your fucking problems and fall down to the streets and sell beaches on the corner or whatever the fuck to get by. It's going to be a lot more fun to do that than to try and hustle by on the scam that the middlemen have made of the world. And that is what this is about. This is middlemen. These are landlords, gods and managers, and rental people who have used their middleman position to choke the entire fucking city and the entire fucking world into domination, where they rather get high on the fucking streets than do the rat race. And that is not what this country was built on. We were always about, like, get on up, get that middle class life, get that 3.5 kids out there in the fucking boonies, and nobody's going to shoot at you with guns or talk about the old country or force you to believe in God or not believe in God. Nobody's going to fucking force you to do anything at all. You can grow old and fat with your kids in the suburbs if you want in this country. That's the American dream, isn't it? And when you go chasing it, you realize that the guy on the corner pounding fentanyl and screaming about fucking QAnon Trump or whatever at the top of his lungs while he smokes crack on the corner as school kids walk by, you begin to realize that guy probably is actually having a better life, maybe, in the respect that he's at least got a lot less stress. If nothing else, he's got more stress than you, but not the sort of stress you deal with on the legit like middlemen path where they choked the choked the copium so bad that you're starving to death, paycheck to paycheck or whatever, but you're still walking the narrow and you're still doing well. And this is the other problem about why they throw their hands up and they don't want to get off the streets. Sure, some of it's mental addiction, some of it's addiction, some of it's mental illness, some of it's just straight up laziness. But a lot of it has to do with the rewards for trying have been stolen by the middlemen so badly that I don't blame them. I don't blame them for not fucking trying. The middlemen stole the country. This is why January 6th happened. The middlemen stole the country. We're so sick of it, we're willing to storm the White House. We don't care. The middlemen stole the country. So no, I don't blame these homeless people for sitting around by the river shooting up dope and talking about fucking dumb shit all day. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't really blame them because it's like, that's a lot less stressful than the straight and narrow.
A direct result of tech. In an ideal world,
they made this world too stressful and too full of middlemen. They made it too hard to buy a meal. They made it too hard to pay the rent. They bailed out the banks instead of the homeless. It's a problem. And so sure, we can despair at them and throw up our hands and say they don't want any help. But honestly, could you fucking blame them? And that is the problem that we can't blame them for is our fault. We let the middlemen choke this world. We let the parasites kill this country.
Actually could have been good for
I think about somebody charging $4,000 for rent, and I think, do you get a live-in bodyguard and a couple of blowjobs every day for that? What the fuck is $4,000 a month worth? I would say not rent. I would say it should pay for your health care. It should pay for your rent. It should pay for your food. It should pay for your insurance. It should pay for your cell phone bill, your internet bill. $4,000 a month should pay for all of your human needs, not just rent. That is a middleman choking the world's dick down his throat in a real and verifiably killing America style.
But the real culprit here is insane zoning regulations.
My friend Tara and I talked about the electrical and zoning gerrymandering that they're doing to sway elections and kibitz and cheat. And that's no good either, because if it's a ghetto, but it's getting rich people's resources, that's not good. And if it's rich people and they're getting rich people resources, that's not good. And there's this fine balance between help and straight up enabling.
Called the NIMBYs. NIMBY stands for not.
And I'm not conservative. I tend to want to err on the side of liberal with this, where I say we fucking help everybody, and I don't care if it breaks us and the government dies. We help everybody here because we're in a bad problem. We let these landlords and bankers kill the world, and we can't stop them now. So we must adapt, and we must lower that rent somehow. Got to go to war with them or whatever's necessary. Choke them legislatively. Do something to stop that rent crisis.
NIMBYs in cities like San Francisco are essentially importing suburban expectations and land use controls into central cities.
Motherfucker.
So geographically, San Francisco is actually a pretty small area, which is not that densely populated. And many of the old school upper income neighborhoods like Nob Hill and Pacific Heights, which is home to the Pelosi family,
Drop the hammer,
are within walking distance to the commercial heart of the downtown
Drop the hammer
area. So when big tech began to arrive, bringing in hundreds of thousands of new young professionals, residents of these neighborhoods became very concerned about the potential construction of high-density apartment buildings, particularly with how this would cause noise pollution with the sounds of jackhammers and forklifts and beyond, but also how the buildings might block their view of the city or the bay. So neighbors of these wealthy areas would get together every time a high-density development was proposed and say, "Not in my backyard," and they would lobby to get their neighborhoods protected under historical preservation status.
Marking a building, corridor, or neighborhood as historic is one tool NIMBYs can use to embalm a neighborhood while feeling good about themselves. They're defending the cultural and historic character of the place.
While this did serve to preserve traditional San Francisco aesthetics, it also basically froze urban development during the city's largest economic boom in history, causing home values to skyrocket and rent to rise far beyond what the median monthly income was. As a result,
San Francisco experienced the most intense gentrification in American history. Black population shrunk from 14.5% to 6% of the city. The poverty line rose so high that households making under $117,000 per year are considered to be low income.
If you're a San Francisco city girl like me, born and raised, it's too crowded here now. It's too much.
Very quickly, the creative class was replaced by the professional class, leaving vast subsections of the city utterly scattered. Still, California politicians didn't care. They wanted exponential growth, and for a while, it was happening. Then, in early 2020, a very hungry man allegedly ate a pangolin at a wet market in Wuhan, China, which ultimately prompted these tech companies to vacate all of their San Francisco offices in favor of a work-from-home model. At some point, these mega corporations like Twitter and Facebook figured out you can make just as much money, if not more money, having employees work from home. Not to mention, according to a recent study, employee happiness has increased by over 20% since remote work began as the industry standard for tech.
We're more productive at home, we're happier at home, we're doing what the company asks of us.
They were happier, healthier, and they realized something.
You know, you couldn't move anywhere and keep your Bay Area money. You know, you couldn't move anywhere and keep your Bay Area money.
Now working from home, hundreds of thousands of new San Francisco transplants had to make a choice. Should we stay in this extremely expensive, unwelcoming city full of homeless people and
Absolutely not.
Like us, and see us as walking
Nope.
emblems of oppression and displacement?
Nope.
Or
Leave.
keep the exact same job and move
Go to Northern Cali. Well, I mean that is Northern Cali, but I'm talking about like go to rural Northern Cali. Don't go to San Fran and go pay a normal rent of $1,800 or $24. Don't be paying $4,000.
to somewhere like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where you can afford a gorgeous mountain home for the same price as a studio apartment in the Castro district. Most Californians in this position picked option 2 and got the hell out of town. So even after California reopened in early 2021,
You want the economy to reopen permanently.
these tech workers and the companies who employ them were like, man, fuck that, we're not going back to San Francisco. And some of these companies realized that emerging AI technology would allow them to cut their workforce in half.
150,000 tech workers have been laid off in 2022 alone.
Oh my God.
Position has been impacted.
I called my boss back.
It wasn't just Bill Gates this time.
Just sobbed over the phone.
It's a Twitter bloodbath. Nearly 4,000 fired in one fell swoop. Half the global workforce. Twitter is not alone. Mass layoffs are happening across the tech world.
I take full responsibility for this decision.
The economy of San Francisco was collapsing in real time. Not to mention, homelessness nearly doubled during COVID.
You know, it's weird. When I think of an operation like Twitter, I think of maybe 100 people. I think you've got your software developers and coders, maybe about 25 of them. I think you've got your creatives and your writers and your R&D, about 25 of them. I think you've got about 10 accountants and, about 10 leadership and, maybe like 10 actual assistants and stuff and some